Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick, Cornett, and Kent Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we're going to talk to a man who probably knows as much about Oklahoma history as anyone alive.
Yes, we entitled this show, not an original phrase, I will confess, "The Past is Prologue," because we've got Bob Blackburn, the Executive Director of Oklahoma History Center, going to come talk to us about what's going on out at his fine location. And they've got always a lot going on.
So many wonderful projects preserving Oklahoma's history all through the state, and Bob's going to kind of get us caught up on the things that the Oklahoma Historical Society's been doing lately. It's all coming up today on The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
Law enforcement runs in my family. My father and I combined have served as citizens of Oklahoma for half a century, and I'm proud to carry on the tradition. I'm Lieutenant Dwight Durant with the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and I am Chickasaw. We all get into law enforcement for various reasons, but the main reason is because we have this need to help other people. The misperception is that we're out here stopping speeders and writing speeding tickets. That's a small portion of what we actually do in an 8-hour day. Putting on the uniform, going through the very intensive patrol school, succeeding through that and graduating, the pride that I had was more than I could ever imagine. Oklahoma Highway Patrol is one of the finest institutions that we have, and I am honored to be a member of the Highway Patrol. I'm honored to be a citizen of the state of Oklahoma, and just as honored to be a citizen of the Chickasaw tribe.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
One of the best kept secrets about the post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is that it can be used at a trade school or a technical school, and it doesn't have to be used at a university or college. These are benefits that the veterans have earned through their service, and they should take advantage of it.
Veterans really need to understand that there are many resources offered by the Oklahoma Department of Veteran Affairs. They're there to help you find the right school for you, the school that will help you and your family make great steps into your future.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we are welcoming back to the set of The Verdict for his 7th appearance, Bob Blackburn. He is the Executive Director of the Oklahoma History Center. Bob did his undergraduate work at Southwestern State University in Weatherford, did his master's and PhD work at Oklahoma State University. In 1980, he joined the Oklahoma History Center. He became the executive director in 1999. He has published 22 books. He's a frequent guest on the History Channel, discussing various topics of historical interest. He was instrumental and probably one of the leading forces in getting the new History Center built, a 215,000 square foot building that is just gorgeous out by the Capitol, on the east side of the Capitol. Bob, welcome back. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I always enjoy seeing both of you as friends as well as colleagues.
So many things I want to talk about. Let's start with the Pop Culture Museum. What's the latest on that?
Well, I'm so excited about that. We will have a groundbreaking ceremony next week on October the 23rd,
Okay.
10 o'clock. Governor Stitt, Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell, Mayor G.T. Bynum, and a host of others, some creatives, some community leaders, those who have helped us get to this spot, because we've been working on this project since 2008. And it's going to be about a $50 million investment in telling the story of Oklahoma's creative people. So those people in movies, radio, television, illustration, literature, all combined with the language of music. And it'll be on Main Street, across the street from Kane's Ballroom, which is sacred ground, so it's in the right spot. Jeff Moore is the director, and he's reached out to the community. We have the Bob Wills family collection, Leon Russell's entire archives filled up 2 semi-trucks. We're working with the families of people like J.J. Cale. We have some new collections being announced soon. But the artistic community has really rallied around this. So next week, it'll be a transformation of the site. We will break ground and start construction, and construction will take about 18 months. And then hopefully open the museum in the fall of 2021.
When you define pop culture, I mean, obviously movies, music come to mind. What else am I forgetting? What else would be a part of pop culture?
Any way someone has expressed their artistic abilities and been able to make a living at it.
Right.
And so a lot of people are probably latent good writers or even singers, but they didn't make a living at it.
Or poets.
Or poets, exactly. And so we will have poets in there. Lynn Riggs started off his career as a poet, a Cherokee poet from Claremore, later went in and wrote Green Grow the Lilacs. Well, his story will be told. So it's a story about these creative people who find a way to make a living at it, and then develop their art form, and then touch the lives of so many people around the world. And then by bringing in what I call shared memory, we'll have a way to market it. So if someone loves Kristen Chenoweth, she's all over this thing. She's in. We will have her exhibit. If someone likes Garth Brooks, we'll have the Garth Brooks story. If someone has memories in their life from the stage play Oklahoma or the movie, we will have that story.
And, you know, of course, Will Rogers has his own museum, but you can't forget Will Rogers when you're talking about the pop culture icons.
Exactly. He's one of the cornerstones, and of course we now manage the Will Rogers Memorial in Home Place.
Yeah,
so
that is an incredible place, by the way. If you haven't been to Claremore and seen that lately, it's really interesting.
And it will be getting better. But we will pull Will Rogers because if you think of all the Oklahomans who have been creatives and have excelled in different fields, no one exceeds Will Rogers.
Yeah.
Started off Wild West roper in a Wild West show, so he makes the transformation to vaudeville. Then he makes the transition to silent movies, then to talkie movies, to radio, to his columns, to his books. Right there, 7 or 8 fields. And this is an amazing, he's a Cherokee cowboy. And all Oklahomans should be supporting that legacy. In a minute, I think we're going to talk a little bit about what we're planning there, but he will be part of that story in the OK Pop. And I think everyone will identify with these people, that they will be from their hometowns. We know the people from Atoka and Altus and Nowata and Woodward. We're going to bring in these stories to tell the Oklahoma history story through their lives.
So this does or does not include sports figures?
It will. In fact, we have not announced it yet, but we're working with Barry Switzer. You might think, well, he's a coach, sportsman, but he's been in 5 movies. He had his own television show for years. And we're working with him on his video and film collections where we will tell his story in popular culture. And then, of course, sports is such a part of our everyday lives. There's almost a way to look at a coach as an artist, at least a dancer, dancing around and avoiding the direct shots from time to time, and surviving, and then excelling. And Barry is still the king. And so we will use his story.
Let me ask about the size of the museum, square footage. You may have said that, but I didn't catch it.
The OK Pop will be about 45,000 square feet.
In downtown Tulsa.
In downtown, right on Main Street, overlooking downtown.
There's a picture on the
It's
screen there.
Little elevation.
Oh, yeah,
And that view is looking straight up Main towards the north, with Canes next to it, 240, right behind. And it's a good location. It's at a crossroads in Tulsa. It's close to the Greenwood community, where we will tell the stories of African Americans like Ernie Fields and the Gap Band. Well, it's also in what they're calling the Arts District, which celebrates the Leon Russells and the J.J. Cales, the David Gates, Patty Page. We have her collections. But it's also close to downtown, this crossroads. So it represents Tulsa. It's not far off of Route 66. We're saying this is where Route 66 will intersect Main Street in Oklahoma. So all this talent around Main Street either goes to Nashville or L.A. or New York, and then those people come back. And all of this mixes together into this creative spirit of Oklahoma creatives.
How did the idea for the Pop Museum come about?
Well, it's really been slowly developing, incubating, I might say. When I became deputy director in 1989 of the Historical Society, I was always into pop culture. I know Mick from KOCO TV in Oklahoma City. My mom was on television with Mick, and so I've always been around popular culture in terms of marketing, its appeal, the magic of broadcast, and all of that. But my first big chance was in 1991, started with a challenge. We had to close 14 museums and sites with a budget cut. So I was learning how to deal with politics, so I still have those scars. But I wanted to resurrect one of them as a new museum, and it was the first museum on Route 66 in Clinton, Oklahoma. It had been the Western Trails Museum. You could have seen better collections in downtown, antique stores. But it transferred to us from tourism 2 years earlier. I said, this is a waste of taxpayer money. We're going to close it. Well, the legislators had other ideas, of course, as they tend to do. And I said, well, how about if we work on keeping it open but change it? They played along with us. We got grants. The local community raised over $400,000, resurrected as Route 66. That's shared memory. That's music. That's television shows. It's movies. Well, going from there with the History Center, we included a lot of popular culture. Mick did some films that we still show in the museum. And then later, we did an exhibit on the history of rock and roll in 2008 at the History Center, and pulled in the Collins kids and Wanda Jackson and all of these pioneers. And from that came a conversation with our friends in Tulsa, in particular George Kaiser and Ken Levitt. They said, well, why don't you bring that to Tulsa? Well, let's talk about it. I always wanted to have a facility in Tulsa, a place to call home. And it led to this idea of popular culture, of not just country music. In fact, one of the oddest conversations I've ever been in was with George Kaiser. He said, this needs to be country music. And I said, rock and roll. And we finally said, well, let's expand it beyond with everything, all forms of music, all forms of entertainment, which is the right way to go.
Well, let's get to a break. I have a lot to talk to you about, so we're going to have to get to a break and come back and do more. We're discussing Bob Blackburn's work with the History Center and specifically the Pop Culture Museum, which is breaking ground in Tulsa and opening here in a couple of years. We'll talk to you on the other side of this break.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative, and this year, our competition teams rank number 2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick, Cornett, and Kent Meyers discussing Oklahoma's pop culture history with Bob Blackburn. And, through my work at the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame, I've learned on an annual basis when we discuss potential inductees that some people have a great deal of tie to the state of Oklahoma. Maybe they lived their whole life in Oklahoma, and other people may have just lived part of their life in here. And I'll throw out a name. Roger Miller grew up in Eric, Oklahoma, but I think he was born in Texas. And I think most people consider him an Oklahoman. But if I were living in Texas, I might say, no, he was born in Texas, and they might claim it. So how do you deal with those that have had multiple states in their careers and their lives?
Well, part of that is who considers themselves an Oklahoman. So that would be the first test. But then to me, the very nature of the OK Pop is connecting the creatives and their art with their story at home. So whereas we might attract a visitor to come see and hear the art or to see the productions of we quickly get to their parents and their grandparents. We quickly get to their mentors and what affected their lives. So although Bob Wills was born in Texas, but I say the Red River Valley is when I talk about him, so we can claim him. It's
Texas Playboys.
It's Texas Playboys, but he came to Tulsa because it was a place where people had enough money in their pocket to go to a dance. And radio was nothing but a long commercial. You do a 30-minute show, come on out, kids, and see us this weekend. We're going to be in Cushing. We're going to be in Stillwater. And then they made their money dance. Well, in Oklahoma, oil patch, even in the 30s, people had a little money to spend. So Bob Wills, to me, is an Oklahoman. His daughter, Carolyn, who has helped give us the family collections, grew up and went to high school at Will Rogers High School in Tulsa. But probably an easier one to really explain is Ron Howard. Ron Howard does not consider himself an Oklahoman, even though he was born in Duncan. But the reason he will be featured here was Rance Howard, his father, who people have seen in the movies. He's been in many of Ron's movies. Was third-generation land run of 1893. Both sides of his family, paternal and maternal, made the land run of 93, homesteaded land near Kaw City in northern Oklahoma. He was raised on the ranch. It's an Irish family who made the land run. If you watch Far and Away, it is an Irish family that makes the land run of 90. That was an autobiographical movie about his family. To me, Ron Howard's creative abilities, his work ethic, the way people trust him, it's all Oklahoma. It comes from those roots in the Oklahoma soil. And his mother was from Duncan. The family still lives in Duncan. I have cousins who played with Ron and his little brother when they were all kids. And so he would come there, and the Oklahoma experience is part of who Ron Howard is. That allows us to embed his story in the land run stories. In OU is where Rance met his wife from Duncan. They were both in the drama school. And so it's a good question, but I want people to ask that when they come in. Well, I didn't know that Brad Pitt had an Oklahoma connection. Yeah, his grandma lived in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and he'd come back summers and spend time. It's a Shawnee, Pottawatomie County culture that's part of the Brad Pitt story. It won't be a featured because it's not as strong as Ron Howard. But that ability to bring it back to the soil of Oklahoma, say this is where it began. This is one way we can understand these creative people with this Oklahoma standard.
Yeah.
Talk about how it's going to be financed, the museum.
The people of Oklahoma are financing about half of it through a bond issue. The legislature 3 years ago in 2016 approved a $25 million bond issue. And so that's the public side. Now we get to the private side. And most everything that I really promote is always going to be a public-private partnership. It's the new way, it's what we have to do. If we're going to grow, we on the public side, and you as mayor were an advocate of this, is that we've got to reach out to the private sector. Where can we partner and add resources from both? Well, in this case, we'll raise another $25 million or more from the private sector in grants. And then that will pay for the exhibits, the collections. The $25 million will build the building. We already have a $1 million donation from David Sharp, a businessman in Tulsa who believed in this project to give us that prime location across the street from Kane's Ballroom. And I'll never forget the meeting with David. When I told him it's the perfect spot, it was sacred ground, almost a tear in his eye. He said, Bob, I now know why I've been collecting land in this area since 1981. It was for this opportunity. I love that coming out of the private sector. And so we think the private sector, Tulsa, the state, the nation, the artists are already doing that. I think that we can raise that $25 million and open in the fall of 21, and it will surprise people. And then it will generate the cash for operations. I will not have to go back to the legislature and say, we're expanding government. We're investing in a service, which
Through
is what
admission fees?
through admission fees, special events. We'll have a 2,000 square foot special event center that should be the home for. We have 400 rentals in the History Center every year now. Over 400 rentals. That's helping pay the bills.
Yeah.
In the Chesapeake auditorium and the Devon atrium and all these other places, we've added venue spaces because we have such a demand. The same thing will happen at the OK Pop. It will become a community center where people can celebrate creativity and why we are proud of Oklahoma.
A lot of people associate your organization with the History Museum in Oklahoma City, but you have facilities all over the state. How many of those facilities are out there under your purview?
Well, under our umbrella, and there's a wide variety of arrangements, but we have some investment in about 30 of them. Some of them we don't operate, some we might own the land and the museum, and we find a nonprofit or a private sector to help run it, like Preservation Oklahoma runs the Overholser Mansion in Oklahoma City, a 1902 mansion that is pristine. It's like someone froze time in 1902. Well, Preservation Oklahoma gets to use the carriage house as an office at no expense. We give them enough money to pay for one staff member and utilities. They raise the rest. These are the kind of partnerships we have.
And at the other end of a pristine house is the sod house that's in northwestern Oklahoma. It's literally a home made out of sod that somehow was preserved and is now inside a facility. And it's just fascinating to look at how this home has withstood the measure of time of, gosh, nearly 100 years now.
And as people drive through Alene, which is the closest town.
Not a lot of people
and there's
do,
not a lot of people in Alene.
It's a little out of the way, but when
Cleo.
you run for governor, you go down every road
That's right.
there is. And
Well, you've
so
probably been in Cleo Springs too.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
Those are the two nearest towns. Well, there may be 200 people in each of those towns. So people say, well, where's the private sector support? Well, those people in that rural community are so proud of that museum, they created the 501c3 nonprofit. They raise money, they support us with volunteers. We have one staff member there. Pretty much everything else comes from that community to keep open a place that's important to our heritage. So we have that same relationship. Indian tribes are stepping up as great partners. I've been able to transfer properties that we started saving in the 1930s, like Sequoia Home Site. We acquired that in 1935. Built a cover building. 3 years ago, I was able to go to the Cherokee Nation and say, we've been taking land away from the Cherokee Nation for 200 years. It's time we should give some of it back. Declared victory. We've been protecting this since the 30s, investing millions of dollars. We transferred it to the Cherokee Nation. Now it belongs to the Cherokee people, part of that communal ownership of land and identity and heritage that'll help them move forward with tribal sovereignty. We've done that with several tribes and foundations around the state.
Let me change the subject. Let's talk about I know you have a new contract or a new arrangement with Ancestry.com. Can you tell our folks about that?
Yes, sir. Again, I like to talk about this because it expresses our public-private partnership attitudes at the Historical Society. It's now our culture. Since 1893, the Oklahoma Historical Society has been collecting newspapers. We were created by the Oklahoma Territory Press Association. So we've always had a close relationship. Well, since 1893, every newspaper published every day or every week comes to us free. We're up over 33 million pages of newspapers that go back to the 1840s when the Cherokees were publishing a newspaper. And so we have all these papers from these towns. Well, let's say that if you're from Midwest City, you want to go in and look at the old Oklahoma Journal. Well, you're cranking page by page, looking for something. Well, the key to unlocking that and the sharing part of our mission, collect, preserve, and share, was the digital revolution. So for 10 years, we've been digitizing some of those newspapers, and we have a couple of million pages on, but it's taken us 10 years to get 2 million pages. Well, if you look at 33 million pages, how long will that take us? 50 years. Well, Ancestry.com has a newspaper project. We came together, they have the resources, we have the collections. We've signed a contract already where we provide all of the negatives. Up to 1923, they will invest $2.5 million. That will be accessible to the public within the next year.
Bob Blackburn, our guest today, and when we get back, I'll discuss a project we have working with Bob. But thanks for coming on the show.
Good to see you.
You bet.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Yes.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
We are a very conservative family, and we believe in old-fashioned family values. We have a loving home there, and we love kids, and we had 5, 6 of our own. And but I had no idea we were going to go into adoption, but it's been very gratifying.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick, Cornett, Kent Meyers. Bob Blackburn was our guest today, and just recently, Bob decided that it might be a good archival tool to take all of the episodes of The Verdict, nearly 1,000 shows, and digitize them and preserve them for the future people in Oklahoma to look back at the guests that we've had through these last 18 years. So we're excited about that.
We are. They'll be better preserved than we are.
And Bob has a website. You can get more information about all the great work, okhistory.org. That's going to do it. For Kent Meyers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week here on The Verdict.